Good morning. Good morning. How about now? Can you hear me? Now you can hear me. All right, fantastic. My apologies. Um, so let me start over. Welcome to the Orisha Lifestyle Academy and the School of Orisha Studies. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever time of day it is that you hear this message, I pray that your mind, your heart, and your spirit are all poised to receive, to accept, and respond to words of wisdom. Ashe. Today, I have a lesson that I'd like to share with you about spiritual protection. And this is a really practical lesson about spiritual protection, as you may know that that's sort of my forte. I like a practical approach to esoteric things. Right? I think that a lot of times we get caught up in the hocus pocus, and we get caught up in the being so elusive and ephemeral that we we lose the opportunity to do things in a consistent and orderly and reliable way that um, can have far-reaching esoteric implications. Um, there's a thing I learned by reading the Kama Sutra, the real Kama Sutra. There's a Kama Sutra that's all about just freaky sex, but then there's the real Kama Sutra, which is a treatise on these 64 arts that every uh, consort should know in order to be adept at her craft. So anyway, in the real Kama Sutra, they talk about very briefly the things that you do because they belong to this world. These are things like being polite. You say "may I," please, and say thank you. You do things like brush your teeth, and you go to bed early and wake up early, and so things like that. And then there are other things that you do that belong to the other world, and the effects of you cannot really measure, right? But you know that they are guaranteed. These are things like making prayers. These are things like performing sacrifice. These are things like keeping spiritual observances, right? We don't really know because people don't. It's like they say, no one has ever died and gone to heaven to be able to report back, right? It's only based on the fact that there's a tradition that spans many generations, and there are disciplines of priesthoods that are custodians of the sacred mysteries, that they're able to tell us this is what happens. We're tracking this, we're studying this, like scientists are studying different planets. Priests and priestesses are studying the dynamics and the mechanics of the spiritual reality. So we do things based on their advice because they're going to have, we don't know how it works, but we know that it does. So either way, this understanding is what gives me a lot of confidence in doing things in a really practical way, with the understanding that very practical, concrete things can have far reaching implications in your spiritual journey and your experience. And so the specific thing that I want to address today is this idea of spiritual protection, and how your practice can promote proactive spiritual protection, right? Now, to put this into context, there's something that Malcolm Gladwell, if you all know Malcolm Gladwell, he's got a couple of good books. My favorite is The Tipping Point. And somewhere in The Tipping Point, he talks about um, this broken window policy. This is something that happened in New York, probably in the 80s, maybe in the 90s. But in the broken window policy, it was an idea that if you have a neighborhood or you have some sort of an industrial area, and you have broken windows, right? If you have broken windows, it will lead to people, spray painting graffiti on the walls. And if you let people have, you know, uh, spray graffiti on the walls, it's going to lead to them doing stuff like leaving abandoned cars. And if they leave abandoned cars, and it's going to promote activities like, people shooting dice or selling drugs, or, doing a variety of other kinds of crimes. Basically, it's a domino effect. Okay, a negative domino effect. It's a what we would call a vicious cycle, right? A vicious cycle is wherein negative things happen. They promote negative ideas, and those negative ideas promote negative behavior, which create more negative experiences, and then it just perpetuates itself. So what they recommend is, as soon as you get a little bit of graffiti, you clean it off. This is why you see in certain places, as soon as graffiti goes up on the wall, there's somebody out there that day, the next day, 2 days later, and they're removing that graffiti. As soon as there's graffiti up there, they remove that graffiti, right? And it becomes a battle. The children think it's funny that they're doing something, but the people who are property owners and are invested are protecting their investment, right? And so it's in their best interest to invest in making sure that there's no graffiti, because they know that graffiti leads to something else that they don't want, and then the vicious cycle just continues to spiral out of control. Likewise, when you stamp out, when you remove that graffiti, when you fix those windows, when you address whatever's out of line, as soon as it happens, then you send a message. You send a message. These things are not acceptable here. Okay. And no matter what it takes, we are going to straighten things out. We're going to put things back in alignment. We're going to carry out our duties and keep our environment conducive to our ability to carry out those duties. Right. So then it becomes a question, as far as this lesson goes, of where are the broken windows in your life? Okay. Where are the areas in which you have things that are out of line? They're out of pocket. Maybe it's the way that you look. Maybe your physical appearance is disheveled, right? You don't take enough personal care, right? Your hair, your looks aren't tight. Maybe it's the way you speak. Maybe your ideas are scattered. You're all over the place. You talk about one thing, and then 30 seconds later you're off on something else, and then 30 seconds later, and right, you have some kind of a broken speech pattern. Okay, maybe you use poor grammar. Maybe you have a very low vocabulary. You're using profanity. Every other word is profanity, right? Maybe it's the way you respond. You get some adversity. Hear people tell you something you don't like. They tell you you can't do something, and your response is inappropriate. Right? These are all things that represent broken windows, in the sense that these are things that are indicators that you don't have a proper standard. You don't have you don't have an elevated standard. You don't have a regal standard, right? Because the things that you're going to see, in Skid Row are things they're never going to fly at the palace. It's just not going to happen, right? And as a matter of fact, the palace, within a certain perimeter, they're not going to let certain things happen. Whereas Skid Row is going to be replete from north, south, east, west, and this whole region is anything goes, because there's no standard. Okay. And so within your spiritual life, it's the same thing. When you are open and receptive to any kind of a suggestion, okay, when you're trying to take shortcuts, for example, and somebody is dangling a little spiritual carrot in front of you, and they're telling you, well, if you become an initiate of Shango, you're gonna have everything. If you have this little thing from Marshon, you're gonna everything is open to you. You can, right? You're that's a broken window, right? It's a broken window, because it's like someone trying to tell you you got rotten teeth. You haven't brushed your teeth in 3-4 years, and then all of a sudden they're going to give you some kind of toothpaste, and you're going to have gleaming white teeth, and all your cavities are going to be gone overnight. That's a broken window, because it doesn't make sense. It's not possible. That represents a kind of a broken window um, approach, right? It's an indicator of a broken window in your thinking and in your behavior. Likewise, like I said, your responses to things. People are giving you advice, they're telling you how to do something, and you have maybe this overall idea that even though you're coming for advice, can't nobody tell me nothing. It's a broken window. These are things that set you up for other kinds of problems. It sets you up for people to, how can I say, take advantage of your inability to maintain a certain level of decorum in your behavior, in your speech, in your presentation. So for us in the United States, this is really important because um, we here in the United States have a culture of degeneracy. We live in a degenerate culture. The United States is a degenerate, decadent culture. And you can almost say, almost, almost anything that you see that's presented to you in mainstream America represents something you should not do. It's a taboo. It's a taboo. We have a degenerate culture. We promote irreverence at every corner, disrespect. It's just normal. The the idea that again, nobody can tell me anything. I know everything. Because I have words, then I know I'm well informed. Because I have an opinion, then you should respect me. This is craziness. It's absolute madness. But that's how our culture promotes independence, how we promote coolness, how we promote freedom. The idea is that the more out of control you are, the more ungovernable you are, the wilder you are in the name of being eclectic or being free. That's, go for it. And you can just look at it. Use that filter to look at just about everything you see. Everything we consider to be funny, everything we consider to be powerful, everything we consider to be, cool here in the United States, it's a degenerate way of behaving. It's something that if you go in anywhere in a traditional environment, even if you go to Europe, you try to take American behavior to Europe, it doesn't equate, because everything that we want to do, or what we tend towards, is this informal kind of a do what you like kind of a way of being. And apart from just being offensive to any civilized person or any civilized culture, what it does on a deeper level is it sets you up for a vicious cycle of negativity. It opens you up. Like I said, these are indicators of graffiti. These are indicators of broken windows. These are indicators of abandoned cars and people selling drugs on the corner and prostitution and all kinds of criminal, right? And I'm not saying that we're criminals. I'm just saying that in the same way that our our cities or areas of our cities promote degenerate behavior, our culture overall promotes degenerate behavior. And that degenerate behavior creates a whole panorama of opportunities for negative spiritual activity and engagement. You're attracting the what we call the ajogun, right? Now, your practice, okay, your practice, observing a calendar, observing certain ritual sequences in your day, being disciplined about what you do and when you do it and who you do it with and where you do it. All of these things put you in alignment with what is wholesome, right? Spiritually wholesome. It keeps you in track. So a lot of times when people talk about, for example, this difference between religion and spirituality, and there's a whole conversation because of degeneracy, as far as I'm concerned, that I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. You overlook, this is the reason why when your granny and your great aunt and half the mothers of your church are hoodoo women. Why do these people hang out in the church? Well, part of it is, condition and what's been programmed, and that kind of thing. But the other part of it is because in the church you get a lifestyle, you get a practice that is going to keep you out of certain things. It's going to make sure that on certain days at certain times you are in certain places, you are doing certain things in a certain way with a certain intention. So even if you deviated at work or in the market or at home, by maintaining your practice in church, you're going to come back, right? You're going to come back to some kind of a center. Your GPS is going to be directing you to the area that you really want to be in, or it's going to at least keep you on the roads that you want to be traveling, in your spiritual journey. So it is the same. It's greater for us. Imagine how much better your granny and them could do with their hoodoo if they were in a religious system. If they had a practice that reinforced the essence and the roots of their hoodoo practices. This is the opportunity that we have as practitioners of Orisha lifestyle. Keeping your calendar, reciting your Ijuba, your Oriki, throwing your Obi on the regular intervals, making your offerings, and then keeping all the observances that Ifa gives you. If you're in a part of a spiritual community, you have your Itato Gun, etc. By being able to stay within the parameters of what Ifa is telling you, these are all the ways in which you're constantly removing graffiti. You're constantly fixing windows. You're constantly having abandoned cars towed away. You're constantly making sure that the people can't shoot dice in front of your house. You're constantly making sure that these guys are not selling drugs on the corner. People are not driving up and down your street at 75 miles per hour. Your your spiritual practice represents a kind of policing in your spiritual life, and it keeps you yourself, most importantly, in the places where you want to be with the vibe that you need in order to maintain a virtuous cycle in your spiritual journey. So I want to encourage every single practitioner or person who's an interested party in Orisha lifestyle, really, really, really um, accept the virtue and the purity that is endemic to a spiritual practice. People haven't done this for thousands of years and countless generations simply to control other people. And that's like another American idea. We believe that all forms of structure and order are repression and control. And that's only because of the experience that we've had in the United States. If you're a black person, then you can almost guarantee that the rules and the orders are trying to keep you underperforming, trying to relegate you to a lesser status. So I understand that, but we're talking about an African system. We're talking about an indigenous system. We're talking about a system that is built to uphold an African indigenous civilization. So all of the practices and the disciplines and the requirements for being a practitioner of Orisha lifestyle are intended to promote the empowerment and purification of African people. That's what it was built to do. Buy into it, invest in it. If this is what you believe and this is what you have accepted as a pathway to elevation for yourself, take it all in. Do it without reservation. Stop fighting the power, right? Accept that this is a system and a practice that's going to allow you to empower yourself to do what you really want to do and be the kind of person that you truly know you're destined to be. So that's our lesson for today. I hope that you have gleaned something valuable from it. I pray that you will seek more ways to deepen your practice, refine your discipline, so that you can live the medicine that will heal your life and heal the lives of those who you are destined to serve. Bye for now.